The architecture of a Gothic scene. When people think about Gothic fiction, they often focus on atmosphere, the darkness, dread, decay and fear. But what makes a scene Gothic isn't primarily its mood or even its subject matter, it's the structure. A Gothic scene is not built to escalate toward an event. It's built to contain, constrict and to withhold relief. In most fiction, scenes move toward action. There is a turning point, a confrontation, or some moment that will break the tension and offer release. But Gothic scenes work differently. They accumulate pressure without resolution. They narrow the reader's emotional and moral space. And they create the sense that something is wrong, but nothing will step in to correct that. Very little may happen on the surface, and yet the scene becomes almost unbearable. That's not a failure of the storytelling, it's the design. A Gothic scene typically places a character inside a space that's already closed, whether it's socially, morally, or institutionally. It's a home, a church, a town, or a public ritual even. The hierarchy is already in place. The rules are operating. Everyone else behaves as though this arrangement is normal. The tension comes from the fact that something is happening that should not be permitted, but it's allowed to continue. The scene does not build toward rescue, but toward the recognition that no rescue is coming. That is the architecture of Gothic pressure. Few writers demonstrate this more precisely than Carson McCullers, one of the central figures of Southern Gothic. Writing in the mid-20th century American South, McCullers was deeply concerned with isolation, misalignment, and the quiet violence of social norms. She does not rely on spectacle, horror, or melodrama. Her scenes are often domestic, they're restrained, and they're outwardly ordinary, but they're profoundly unsettling. In her story, The Member of the Wedding, very little happens in a conventional narrative sense. There is no dramatic rupture, there's no climactic exposure, and there is no moment where the story intervenes to correct what we are witnessing. Instead, a 12-year-old girl, Frankie Adams, emotionally inserts herself into an adult ritual, a wedding, believing it will transform her life and grant her a sense of belonging. The social world allows this, and that permission is the source of the discomfort. Frankie's longing is intense, but her understanding is incomplete. She moves toward adulthood without the language, protection, or authority to make sense of what she's exposing herself to, and the adults do not meaningfully intervene. They redirect, deflect, and carry on. The wedding proceeds, the ritual holds, the social order remains intact. Nothing dramatic happens, and yet the pressure continues to tighten. What deepens the unease is that this scene exists within a Southern social structure shaped by racism and class hierarchy. These forces are not loudly announced, they're simply assumed. Black characters move within constrained roles. Class determines who serves, who speaks, and who belongs. Whiteness and adulthood carry quiet authority. No one calls it out, and no moral voice intervenes. The system is not failing, it is functioning as intended. Frankie is absorbing a world ordered by exclusion, hierarchy, and permission without the language to resist it, and the narrative refuses to rescue either her or the reader from that knowledge. That is a distinctly Southern Gothic form of containment. A non-Gothic story might interrupt this pattern, someone might intervene, something might be named or resolved, but McCullers refuses to give the reader that release. The scene ends, but nothing is morally repaired. The social order persists. The child is redirected, not protected. The underlying structure remains untouched. The reader is left holding what the characters never articulate. That is how a Gothic scene works. Not by escalating toward action or shocking the audience, but by constructing a space where pressure accumulates without mercy and resolution, if it comes at all, feels incomplete, compromised, or insufficient. And that is the architecture of a Gothic scene.